folks, this your boy Quan here, and I'm trying to start back up with the Horror Junkies podcast. So, this is pretty much the me coming back, the emergence, I guess. Now, things will be changed up a little bit. If you've seen maybe my past video, for a short time being, or for a time being, Sir Edge, who was our second host, he will not be with us for a little bit. He'll be handling some things until things get balanced out. But know that he is in good spirits. And as usual, I'll keep a spot for him whenever he comes back and he wants to jump back in. But after loads of thinking, loads of wanting to possibly do something similar with this, I'm going to try my best to lead the helm and keep this going, so that hopefully when he comes back, we'll have a lot of other people that'll be interested in this. And who knows, we might even have, like, I guess, a few awesome takes, a few awesome newcomers that could maybe even sub in to be a second host or a surprise host, if you will, on this kind of thing. But once again, I'm your host, Quan. I'm the Prince Eccentric Follow Math. I'm pretty much posting this on my channel. Remember, eccentric, weird, interesting, or pretty much follow math, a love of learning. So I'm pretty much an odd person of learning. I love to learn a lot. I love to do a lot of things. If you've seen some of my videos on this channel, you know that I like to dabble into a lot of things, and this is one of them. I like to talk about horror. I like to talk about scary things. Today, I'm going to go with pretty much a recap of movies that I've seen so far that I think you should too, or that I don't think you should see, and talk about pretty much a lightly serious topic in horror. So, if you haven't caught any of my other shorts or other videos that I've gone through, two of the movies that I've seen so far that have seemed pretty interesting, seemed pretty good, is Woman in the Yard. That was very good. I liked it. It definitely it's definitely pretty much I want to say similar to The Babadook in a way. And if you watch the movie, you'll see what I'm talking about. But I gave it 3.5 stars because it is unique, and it also has the topic that it also has a similar thing that we'll be going over today in this topic. And another movie, one of the biggest movies I've been looking forward to this year, is Sinners. If you haven't seen it, go see it. For horror fanatics, it is definitely a good vampire movie, but the first half of the movie, nothing kind of comes in yet. It kind of sets the stage for all the characters, which, if you do this correctly, if any movie does something correctly, they set the characters up correctly and why they're in the movie. Because, and I'm going to go into a light tangent here, I think the main thing that happens sometimes in horror movies is that they don't go into enough character development. They don't go into enough things that make us actually care about the characters. It is pretty much, meat for the meat grinder, if you will. We have this person right here. They do this one thing, but other than that, they're all right. Or in other cases, we have this person right here. They're mean. You want them to die. That's it. With this one, it's pretty much a story within a story, because on top of, the vampire horror that comes into it in the other half of the movie, before it, you have this period drama to where there's a decent amount of fleshed out characters that you can kind of chill out with, characters that you can get to know, characters you can understand their motivation and how they became the way they are. And I loved it. I actually love this movie. It's one of the movies that I've dubbed almost multi-genre, because it's not just horror. It's drama, has the romance, and if you already heard about it, it definitely has musical tributes to the point to where you might be going out the theater, moving and singing with certain things. But all in all, I like the characters, both the heroes and the villains, if you will. I think the villain is very good and fleshed out. And I have a theory on why the villain, the way he is, and why he chooses the music. Well, I mean, there's no question, but this is also kind of like why I guess the director might have chose this villain and this heritage, and why he made it so in this movie, besides other things, which I might give a dive into that, because I think out of all things that are talked about in the movie, talked about the movie with other YouTubers and stuff. I don't know if that's been touched on yet, but I like how I might kind of put a spin on. Anyway, if you haven't seen Sinners, go see it. It's very, very good feasting, if you will. When Ryan Coogler made this movie, he said he wanted this to be like pretty much a full plate, and I 100% agree. It pretty much has horror elements, storytelling elements, character development elements, surprise elements, music elements, spiritual elements. I mean, this has by far a lot of things to talk about in one movie. And on top of that, is one of the few things that this movie does well, which is it mixes everything perfectly. I think one reviewer stated that if any other director tried to make this movie, it would be a hot mess. But because Ryan Coogler did it, and he did it in such a way to where everything kind of melds in nice and easy, it's like you're eating some good food from an awesome restaurant, and all the taste, all the genres kind of mix well together. They don't overpower each other. They just kind of mix very well with each other. And that's my stamp on it. That's actually one of the first movies on my list that I give literally 5 stars. It's very good. I appreciate it. But on top of that, this movie goes over through a lot of metaphors. And that's what we're diving into a little bit today. I think we might have talked about this one episode, but I like to dive into it a little bit more, when I think about it with, with the Babadook, the Babadook, depression. He's a metaphor for depression. He's the spirit of depression. And Woman in the Yard, I think, is the same thing. She is the spirit of depression. I want to say more likely the spirit of suicidal depression, of course, that grunging, that depression that is grinding you into the ground to where you want to do something drastic. That kind of depression, which all depression has that. But yeah. I think we've definitely already talked about this before. Pretty much the vampires. Vampires is a sign of like, sickness, but also a little bit of, if I had to say it, a little bit of pretty much seeking immortality, because there's always that line that they look slightly pale or slightly dead, but they're immortal, that they have the gift of staying alive. That is the thing. And also, of course, uncontrolled thirst. Werewolves, of course, uncontrolled anger, just like when the moon kind of triggers the transformation of a werewolf, something can trigger us all in some ways to be completely angry, to be complete animalistic, primal, even savages, if you will. We have ghosts, ghosts being the sign of not only evil spirits, of course, but also the sign of the past. Ghosts is pretty much a very good sign of like, we can never really let go of the past, or in some cases, the past never really lets go of us. There's always some part of it that always kind of haunts us a little bit. And the same thing can even be said for like, not only the past things that we've done, but also the past things that we've experienced. Those experiences can always seem to haunt us. They always seem to be able to give us that scare, that, PTSD, if you will. Which, yeah, that can be a good thing. Those can be a metaphor for PTSD in some cases. Which can also, with demonic possession, not only can be a sign of like, not talking about, a dark spirit coming into you and making you do stuff, it can demonic possession can also be a sign of, pretty much somebody having that. I don't want to say bipolar, but I want to have, like, those tendencies to where, like, there's something dark in you and you have to do something. You have to be encouraged by it. Possessions can also be, like, a weird case of, like, the alter ego, if you will. Let's see here. What other ones? Zombies can be are not only a sign of, like, uh pretty much not only being like one of us, or having, like, everyone being the same. So technically zombies can be a good way of interesting sign of, like, the loss of individuality. Because, when you look at zombies, even though they have all this and that going on, they still, zombies are not really very original, unless it's like a certain zombie flick. But it could be, like, people following the crowd to the point to where they are zombies, or people being out of their minds to the point to where they are zombies, that they don't have any true control. They just focus on what attracts them. They focus on what's in front of them. They focus on what their bare essentials are. They don't have no life because they only focus on this one thing. I'm trying to think of some other stuff, but also there's a lot of movies that use metaphors in the movies, like pretty Sinners being one. There's been a lot of talks that the vampires, or turning into vampires, could be like the sign of, I guess, the colonization of something. Especially with especially with the lead vampire kind of using the narrative of trying to have people convinced to be part of the vampire group, which weirdly sounds familiar because, when you look at it, when you think about it, how he says it and how he does it, it really goes down to, like, a lot of messages we've heard before. And funny enough, a lot of people that probably would go onto that side because it does sound so good to be on this side, which is why I've always tried my best to have a neutral perspective. I'm able to see both the cons and pros of both sides. And you need to be able to. That's why I try to ride the neutral line as best as possible. But let's see here. We have, maybe with, like, sea monsters, of course, fear of water, fear of what's underneath the water, which I lightly have. I mean, but it's also based on that belief that I also have an idea of what is in that water. It's probably not the best thing to be in the ocean, in the water. But yeah, there's a lot of other metaphors that I can kind of see, both when you read between the lines, implied and also not implied, or there might be a thing that might be flipped with certain things in certain movies and certain stories. If you do like this, or if you like this subject in general, please let me know. Tell me about, I guess, like a certain movie and what that creature metaphor was to in that movie. Tell me what you think about that. But other than that, the horror junkies podcast will be looking a lot like this, unless I get a surprise from either Edge or some other person that wants to jump in. That being said, I'm your host Quan. Stay spooky, love horror. Deuces.